bicycles. I'm Ashley and I hope you're having a lovely summer so far. This month's collection takes inspiration from William Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream, with a storyline centred around fairies, woodland magic and the fading moonlight of a waning crescent amidst the starry backdrop of a midnight and twilight coloured sky. We're so excited to bring to you varieties of flowers that offer an eclectic mix of magical colours, forest-like textures, all of which are accented by sprigs of greenery we can always find well at home during a walk in the local woods. In this video today, we'll be talking you through how to construct the Midsummer Night's Dream Teapot letterbox flowers. All our stems are prepared and our vases with the water and the feed. However, you can always refer to our flower care video on our channel if you'd like to understand how to go about this. The strongest stems you'll receive with these flowers are a combination of cherry blossom branches and magnolia branches. So what we'll do is take our cherry blossom branches, we'll trim these down and we'll put those to either side. Then we'll take our magnolia branches and we'll position these to the front and back, with the largest stems always going towards the back, as we'll always be using stems to create a graduating height difference from tall to short. Next we'll take our Lilac gypsophila, which also offers volume and softer structure for the longer stems. So gypsophila has a lot of offshoots which creates a lot of volume, and we can use this to our advantage when creating this structure. We'll do this by trimming away the majority of the length in the main stem from its offshoot and make sure that the flowers rest just above the opening of the water vessel. Then next, to build out our brid, we'll take the leather leaf, the viburnum blackberries and the ivy. These have been chosen because they're often what you find as you go through the woods. And as you get towards the end of a woods where the sunlight starts to burst back through again, you always see swathes of bracken which are very similar to these leather leaves, so we thought they'd be nice to add in. With the ivy, we can take this and we can create loops. We won't do this with all of the ivy, just with a third to a half, depending on what you prefer. Then we'll split in two one of the ivy stems and we'll feed it into the front so that it tumbles out of the opening of the vessel. And this starts to help it look really wild and woodlandy. Then with the viburnum blackberries, we'll trim away until we feel that they're not too top heavy to fall out of the teapot. Again, removing any leaves which fall under the water level. So we'll just start to thread this in. And then with the leather leaf, because it has such a large head, we need to make sure it's not too top heavy for the size of the water vessel. So in a similar way as we did with the gypsophila, we'll trim it right down and we'll feed it in around the viburnum. So again, it's a very tall stem, which you can use to your advantage if you'd rather position it towards the back of the design, but with this particular design, we're using this to build out the grid. And then we'll take our final piece of viburnum, and we'll just thread this in somewhere, maybe towards the front. As we always say, there are no hard and fast rules with this type of floristry. It is just about preference. So please do see these only as guidelines and not as an ultimate way of doing things or not doing things. So next we'll take our asparagus fern, again, making sure it's not too top heavy. And then we'll thread this in, making sure it sits relatively low to the opening of the teapot. So as you can see, we're now starting to build out a grid with lots of different textures, colours and heights, which are offering flexibility for other stems while still providing a real rigid, sturdy structure through the wooden branches. So now we'll take the candle-shaped flowers, being the larkspur, the maroon Astilbe and pastel pink Astilbe. So to create our triangular formation, we'll put the Astilbes on either side and we'll use the Larkspur as the centerpiece. So we'll do this by trimming away the leaves and we'll start to trim these down. Again, always on the angle, just to help increase the longevity of your flowers. We'll trim that down a bit more. Different tones of maroons and claret reds are used throughout this design in the different flower types, just because it offers that very unexpected pop of colour which you wouldn't necessarily be used to seeing next to the likes of lilacs and lavenders, but still works really well. So with our larkspur, a very naturally long stem, we'll only trim away about 1 inch or 2. And again, we'll remove any of the leaves or offshoots which will sit beneath the waterline or not be visible. So we'll just strip away the leaves and we'll position this in the centre. So with this particular stem, it has a natural curve to it, so we'll work to the advantage of the unique flower and we'll actually make sure that that curve is positioned to face the front so you see the flowers as much as possible. Now we do have a couple of offshoots from this. Again, we can use those in the spout later on, so we'll keep that to one side. So in this arrangement, you'll also receive this very unique variety of alliums. They're almost like spears the way that they're shaped. I love them. And you can also see how they graduate from a lime colour at the bottom, going towards more of a maroon at the top. And they're almost quite iridescent when you get up close because they have a pearlescent finish on every single flower bud. And naturally, other flower stems might begin to move as you introduce new varieties to the design. Again, as we always say, that's okay. You can leave them as they do fall, or if you want to keep messing with them, if you've got the time, go ahead. So next we'll take the Liatris. Again, stripping away any leaves which will fall beneath the waterline or not be in full view. Another good reason to take away the leaves which go lower down the stem is because as you start to add more into the water vessel, the leaves lower down might start to disrupt the position of the other flowers. So if you clean it away, it will avoid this from happening. So as you can see, we're starting to create a real natural fan effect again. So next we'll take our light pink dahlia, luminescent like a moon in the sky. And we'll just keep twirling it until it's in the position where you think it's going to be viewed the most. Once we've added this, we'll add the other dahlia. Again, this is a naturally long stem and it's quite nice being that way, so we'll make the most of its height and add this towards the back of the design. Then we'll take our roses, like a cluster of stars, we'll put it next to the moon. Sorry if you can hear Bella the dog in the background chewing on her jambone. The joys of having a French bulldog as your mascot. So then we'll take our final splash of luminescent colour in the garden rose, removing any outer petals. And then we'll take away the leaves, which aren't needed. And again, working to the magic of 3 as we always do, we'll start to create 3 points with our 3 different light coloured stems. You'll have to excuse me if I sound a bit nasally today. Suffering with the joys of hay fever, which probably sounds ironic being a florist. And now we'll fill our midsummer sky with our midnight to twilight coloured Eustoma. And with these Eustomas, there are many offshoots. It is a very heavy flower stem, so you can leave it just as it is if you wish to, or you can split it out and have a real spread of the colour going all the way through the design. And that's what we'll be doing today. So again, to help with creating those graduating heights from tall to short, we'll start with a longer stem at the very back. And we'll just make sure it supports the larkspur rather than hiding it, making sure the larkspur sits in front. If any of the more fragile flower stems do start to snap away from the main stem, trim it off, keep it to one side, and again it can be used in the spout. So as long as you always make sure your water vessel, or in this case the teapot, is always filled to the very top with water, your flowers will be fine. So now we'll take the remainder of our ivy and we'll start to just insert this around the very edges, just so it looks very wild and like it's tumbling out. And with the remainder of the ivy, we can always also just add it in if there are any negative spaces where you feel like it will add extra balance. So then we'll take our sanguiso. This is very soft and very top heavy, so there's a lot of movement in this flower, which means it's always best to position this towards the end of your arranging. And then we'll take our carnation. I absolutely love this carnation. It goes almost from like an autumnal auburn colour into a very light violet in the centre. And then again, just looking for any negative spaces, we'll just add it in, pressing it gently into the grid, just enough so that it sits at the height we need it to be, whilst also in a position where it can take up the water and the nutrients. And finally, we'll take our 3 lilac coloured stems, which come with this design, being a scabiosa, clematis, and a rose. And we'll just look for any final negative spaces within the display and fit them in appropriately. Again, there's no hard or fast rules with this, it's just a case of preference. And there are just 1 or 2 small spaces left in this grid now, given how many flowers are actually in here. So now we have a nice distribution of lavender and lilacs running throughout, but there is maybe just a bit of a negative space here at the front where this rose will fit perfectly. So next we'll take this midnight blue coloured tulip and we'll position this towards the centre. It's so spectacular. Again, I think this deserves to have centre stage. And finally, we'll take those offshoots of flowers that we kept to one side earlier, and we'll add these into the spout as the final finishing touch. So now you have a teapot pouring out flowers. And there you have it, the Midsummer Night's Dream Teapot Letterbox flowers. I hope you enjoy.